Hello and welcome to the We're Not Experts History Podcast, or as I nearly told someone earlier this week, the We're Not Escorts History Podcast. My name's James. I'm not an escort, but all offers are considered. With me is Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. How are you?
And well, advertising for business apparently. How
Yeah.
are you?
I'm fine. I still have a slight cough. So
Yeah, good to get the
if
excuses
my
out of the
cough,
way early.
if my cough does make an appearance during this episode, I apologise in advance. And I'd also like to point out that it is absolutely pouring it down here in lovely sunny England. So if my mic does pick up the rain, again, I can't do anything about that. Hopefully it doesn't affect your listening enjoyment too much, but we'll see. It's actually stopped. It's actually stopped, but it might start again in a second. So anyway, now I've got that out of the way.
Now we're talking about the weather. Bloody
We
hell.
are.
Right, anyway,
Typical Brits.
what subject do you actually... Yeah, well, I'm English. Which subject will you be talking to us about today, other than the weather and your poor excuses?
And my cough. Today I'm going to be talking about the Great Fire of London, which happened in 1666 in London, believe it or not.
I've never guessed.
No. So, yeah, Great Fire of London. So we're just off the back of the Great Plague, which wasn't just the Great Plague of London. It actually affected most of the UK, if not all of the UK. And people haven't learnt much from the plague. London's still pretty much the same as it was. Just very chaotic, narrow, winding streets, questionable hygiene, everything's made of wood, and the city's starting to buzz again after the plague. So a bit like how we were after lockdown when finally we were allowed out. It's kind of things are picking up, trades picking up, city's getting busy. The air's just full of... So I'm trying to give you a picture of what London was like. Particularly if you haven't listened to the previous podcast about the Great Plague, go listen to it. It's really good. I thought it was good anyway. But yeah, so
Wait through it.
You did. Well done. So yeah, it's very chaotic, very narrow, timber framed houses. The air's just full of smoke and sewage and just general smells, rubbish collections, more of a suggestion than a system. And people were still throwing the contents of their chamber pots out of their windows, so that hadn't changed.
Happy days.
Happy days, yeah. And as I've said as well, buildings were either made entirely of wood or they were timber framed at the very least. And there were so many crammed into such a small space that you could literally shake hands with your neighbour across the street. That's how close the houses were.
Yeah, what I remember of these houses, you'd be given a small area of land, so you build upwards, and then you'd build up and out to give yourself more room, so they got closer to each other, which obviously didn't help.
No, and when you see the old medieval buildings, I mean, I think they look quite nice, but you get like the funny overhang at the top, like the top's bigger than the bottom. Yeah. Because they were trying to take up less floor space but still have more room. On top of that, so you've got the wooden houses, most of them have straw roofing, and you've also got a generous helping of open flames, your candles, your hearths, careless bakers, we'll come to that. And
giveaway.
Yeah, so it's really just a recipe for a fire hazard, a great big fire hazard waiting to happen. So that was London back then, messy, lively, a bit smelly and very flammable.
Yes, not too dissimilar.
No.
Only not quite as flammable.
Except it's not made of wood, so not quite as flammable. So early hours of Sunday, 2nd of September in 1666, in a bakery on Pudding Lane. I'm sure most people know this part of the story.
Yeah, I think that's the one fact most people are probably aware of.
So The bakery is owned by Thomas Fariner, or it could be Farina. I'm going to say Fariner.
No, fair enough. Spot
It
on.
was.
Yeah.
Oh. And he just so happened to be the king's baker. So it's probably not a job he wanted to mess up by setting the whole city on fire, but mess up he did. And it's thought that the fire actually started when a spark from the baker's oven, which obviously hadn't been extinguished properly the night before, caught something flammable nearby, which could have been anything, flour dust, kindling, pretty much everything was flammable then.
I have seen on the television where they've tested this hypothesis and it was more than likely the flour dust.
I guess it would have been floating around in the air.
Yeah, who knew flour dust was flammable?
Well, they definitely knew after this.
Well,
but anyway.
The insurers did, yeah.
Yeah. So, naturally, the building, like most in London, was timber framed. So it went up very, very quickly. Luckily, the occupants, almost all of them, managed to escape. They all jumped out of an upstairs window into the neighbour's house. So that just shows you how close they were, because they could jump from their window to their neighbour's window. Their maidservant, unfortunately, she was too scared to make the jump. So when the house did burn down completely, she became the fire's first victim, which is very sad.
Only has herself to blame.
Yeah, she should have just jumped, but...
Jump.
Just jump, woman. So house is on fire. Neighbours are trying to douse the fire. It's not working. And when the parish constables arrived an hour later, I don't know why it took them an hour, but they arrived about an hour later. I guess they would have been dealing with other
traffic in London's
things.
bad.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, traffic jams. They suggested at that point that the adjoining houses should be demolished to help prevent the spread. So they obviously had the sense to see where this was going. But unsurprisingly, the homeowners who owned these houses, they weren't too thrilled at this. And they said, well, no, we want to speak to the Lord Mayor, who at the time was a Sir Thomas Bloodworth. And they said he can make the final call. So he arrived. And by the time he got there, the wind's picking up and the flames are literally already starting to leap from house to house. So this is escalating fast. All the neighbouring houses are fully ablaze, and the fire's already eyeing up the warehouses, which are just down by the river. This happens quite close to the river, and the more seasoned firemen on the scene, they're calling for demolition. They're saying, look, we've got to pull these buildings down. This is spreading.
They want to create fire breaks, yeah.
Yes. Bloodworth wasn't too keen. His reasoning was that, but the buildings are rented and we don't know where the renters are, or we don't know where the owners are, so we can't ask permission. So it seems that, like today's world, even with the risk of the whole city going up, paperwork still comes first. But Thomas Bloodworth, it seems he only landed the top job, not because he was particularly good, but because he just knew, well, he was just good at nodding in the right meetings.
He was a yes man.
He was a yes man. And now he's faced with a real emergency. He just goes to pieces and makes his infamous comment. So his reaction was, a woman might piss it out.
That's the one thing I could tell you about him, is that what he said.
Yes, I think most people will know that that's quite an infamous comment. So a woman might piss it out, and after that he went off home and took himself off to bed, probably hoping that someone else will deal with it while he's having a lie down.
Yeah, did they actually try that? I don't know if they actually tried that. They
may have done.
If they just found a woman to piss on it.
Yeah, but obviously it didn't work. Even if they did try, it didn't work. Anyway, so he's gone. He's sodded off, and it would be easy to blame him for letting the fire get out of hand, and he obviously didn't handle it very well. But realistically, he may not have had a lot of choice. See, firefighting in those days, it was more guesswork than science. And we don't know at that early stage, knocking the buildings down. I mean, I don't know how it could have got much worse, to be fair, but it may have made it worse. Maybe.
Well, they still use fire breaks in forests now. They do.
They do
clearing in the hope.
Yeah, they do, and there is method to it, but
they did. There's a lot of talk about the high winds at the time, and that probably wouldn't.
No,
it would probably help the fire still spread.
It was helping the fire, but it wasn't helping the situation. So, if we look at obviously 17th century London, if you look at how things were, fires were common. They were about as common as gossip and bad smells. Fires were happening all over the place, all the time. Because you think you've got a very dangerously overcrowded maze of timber-framed buildings. You've got open flames, unattended candles, lots and lots of flammable bits and bobs just thrown around everywhere. You're going to have fires. You're going to have fires. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nothing man-made like plastics or anything, which obviously they do burn, but everything is going to be wood and paper.
They don't catch like wood and paper does.
Cotton
and material. So, in an attempt to keep things vaguely under control, they did have around 1,000 watchmen, and they were known as bellmen, and they patrolled the streets at night, keeping an eye out for general trouble. And if a fire broke out, they would ring the church bells, but it would be like a muffled kind of ring, just a little, warning, like a little trouble. And then people would just rally together. They'd grab buckets and axes, and they would all just. So there wasn't a fight. You didn't dial 999 and call the fire brigade. It was a case of, everyone just kind of mucked in and just tried to put the fire out. And it was more about enthusiasm than efficiency. The general plan was chuck water at it. If that doesn't work, pull it down. End of. And in every parish, there legally was supposed to be a stash of emergency gear, which would be things like ladders, leather buckets, and fire hooks. Fire hooks.
Fire hook is?
Fire hooks, yes. And I mean, I imagine firemen today will still be using them, but they were just basically long poles with a hooked head, and that's what they would use to tear down the walls and to make the fire breaks. If things got really bad with a fire, they would blow it up on purpose to try and stop the flame. So kind of like a 17th century version of turning it off and on again. Now, this method could work if it was used in time, but because with the 1666, I nearly said 1966, because of the 1666 fire.
Maybe we should do that as well. Just make a note. Do 1966.
Yeah, I'll let you do that one, football man. Because the demolitions were delayed due to the Lord Mayor being, dithering about and not making a decision. While the city's going up around them, people are basically just trying to, just chuck buckets of water on it, ringing the church bells and just hoping that the fire would just burn itself out. Yeah. So, obviously, putting out a fire with water, it works in theory, and even back then, London had a network of elm pipes which was supplying tens of thousands of homes with water, and that would have come from a big tower up at Cornhill, or a fancy reservoir in Islington. So there was actually a water supply going to a lot of homes, probably the richer homes, I would imagine, not the slums.
No, probably not.
I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, they would have had the standpipes. I don't know when they came in, but anyway. Obviously, as well, the fire started next to the river. So you think, that's quite a convenient location for a fire. So we could just have a little bucket chain going on, like you see on TV. But as it turned out, when your house is on fire and the sky's full of sparks, people just tend to panic, and leg it. And that's what happened. So instead of organising themselves into a human chain, everyone just panicked. And then matters were made a lot worse when the flames actually reached the river and latched onto the water wheels under the London Bridge, which effectively cut off the piped water supply. So, yeah, not good. So
I can't imagine that water going through the pipes was particularly pleasant.
no, but it may have put the fire out if it hadn't have been cut off.
Yeah, I'll see more about. Yeah.
But now they did have fire engines, believe it or not.
Did
they did, and it wasn't our fire engines, the big red shiny things that go neenor neenor and flash blue lights.
Sorry, they go what?
Don't make me say it again.
I wasn't paying attention. I do apologise.
Saying that they don't. They don't do neenor anymore, do they? They make a different sound. Neenor's from when I was a kid. I remember them going neenor neenor. No?
Okay. Should we carry on?
I'm going to Google this afterwards.
Well, whatever keeps you happy.
But anyway, so the fire engines then, they weren't neenorring. They were basically just big shiny pumps. Some had wheels. Most of them were just on like a clumsy wooden sled type thing, and they would have been pulled by horses. But can you imagine trying to make your way to a fire, dragging a big heavy sled across cobbled streets? You're not going to get there very fast.
No, I imagine that sled's probably wooden as well.
Yes, it would be. Yes, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they did attempt to get the fire engines to the fire, and they dragged them down to the river, but then they kind of dumped them into the river by accident. Oops. So
it's like an insurance job.
Yeah. So by the time they kind of got the soggy machinery out, the fire was just off. It's
gone too far.
Yeah. So this was early hours, about sort of 1-2 a.m. This is all kicked off, and as the morning progressed, the fire progressed, and at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, our friend Samuel Pepys, Mr. Pepys, London's nosiest neighbour, he climbed up the Tower of London to have a look at the disaster, and from where he was, he could see that the east winds were really whipping up the flames into a proper firestorm. And even though it's only 7 in the morning, already 300 homes have been completely burnt to the ground. Wow. And even the houses in London Bridge, even the houses in London Bridge, they're starting to go up, because London Bridge then was packed full of houses. It wasn't empty. So Pepys, straight away, he's jumped into a boat and he rows over to Pudding Lane because he's thinking, I'll get front row view, see what's going on, put it in the diary. And it was chaos, absolute chaos. People are trying to get their belongings into boats, they're trying to dodge the flames. Some people are just sitting in their houses hoping that it will just go away, and then they have to leg it because the house is about to burn down. So
burying their heads in the sand.
Yeah, so that, chaos.
Yeah.
So Pepys then thinks, well, I need to let the big wigs know about this. So he cruised west along the Thames and he goes to Whitehall and he delivers the news to the Royal Court. So King Charles II, he obviously hears what's going on, and he summoned Pepys and says, what's happening? And Pepys bluntly said to him, unless we start pulling down buildings, this is just going to keep rolling. This isn't going away. So the king says, right, will you go and tell Bloodworth that he needs to pull his finger out of his bum and start getting some buildings pulled down. No dithering, no paperwork, just get rid of them. Pull them down, get rid of them. And King Charles's brother, James, your namesake, the Duke of York.
Yeah, all the best people.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So he offered the help of the Royal Lifeguards, which, I mean, you probably know because you know everything, but the Royal Lifeguards, that was a cavalry unit that was formed in the 1650s. A cavalry.
Cavalry.
I can't pronounce. Don't make me.
It's how it's spelled.
No, I can't.
Cavalry.
That sounds wrong to me.
There
Do you know what?
No.
Talking of pronunciation, my entire life, and it wasn't until in
pronunciation
recent years, I realised that chimney was pronounced chimney and not chimley. My whole life, I thought it was chimley. Why did I think that? It hasn't even got an L in it. Where did that come from?
No.
And to this, and even
Cavalry.
Now, I have to think.
Cavalry's got an L in it.
Yeah, but I have to think before I say the word chimney. It sounds unnatural to me to say chimney and not chimley. Anyway, so yeah, that's why I'm.
Yeah.
Me and my pronunciation. Anyway.
I suggest we move on quickly.
Yes.
So the lifeguards are called
the
Cavalry.
Royal Lifeguards. Where am I? Okay, no. He offers their assistance. So Pepys goes along, he finds Bloodworth, who's pretty much having a nervous breakdown by this point. He's obviously at some point left his bed and he's gone back to where the fire's happening. And he, Pepys says, right, you need to start pulling buildings down. And Bloodworth says, oh, but the fire overtakes us faster than we can do it. That was his response. And he also refused the offer of more soldiers. He said, no, we're fine. And then he goes home and goes to bed. So there we go. That's him again.
Yeah. I don't like him.
I'm not painting a very good picture of this man, am I? Anyway.
Lord Mayor's London. I just can't see it catching on.
So by this time, because a few hours have obviously gone by and the fire's just carrying on, and the king himself, he sails down from Whitehall on the royal barge, or in the royal barge, and to inspect the scene. And he's like, well, Bloodworth's done one, houses are not getting pulled down, so he's fed up. He just pulls rank and he says, right, he gives a go-ahead for a full-scale demolition to the west of the fire. So anything to the west of the fire, which is obviously where the fire's heading at this point because of the wind, just pull it down. Get rid of it.
A man of action, what we need.
Yes. In the meanwhile, Pepys, he heads home himself to attend to the very important matter of burying his cheese and his wine in his garden.
God, for that.
In an attempt to protect it from the flames. This was actually recorded in his diary. I didn't just make that up. And he later recalls that he did manage to recover his cheese and wine. So, sorry, archaeologists, but it was in his diary. And yes, you might have mentioned it. You might have mentioned it. And I checked, and it was actually in his diary. And
I don't want to mention it otherwise.
No, you said you heard it on QI. You said you heard it on QI.
And I'd heard it on QI, yeah.
What? Okay, anyway.
That's how I knew it was true.
Okay, fair enough. So,
don't make these things up.
Pepys is burying his cheese, and by this time the fire
There's a euphemism. Sorry.
No, that's cutting the cheese. Anyway.
I don't know that one. That sounds disgusting.
Cutting the cheese? Have you not heard that?
Should we move on before you have to explain
No, I have to explain what that means. When you let one rip, you say, who cut the cheese?
Oh, I've never heard that.
Have you not? Okay, fair enough.
No, burying your cheese sounds worse.
It does actually. That sounds quite dirty. Anyway, fire's raging by this point. People have pretty much given up trying to tackle it, and they're just running. They're just running away, and the streets have very quickly just become packed with panicked Londoners just getting carts and bundles and pets and probably the odd chicken, and just trying to get out. And at the same time, you've got the firemen trying to get through. And when I say the firemen, these wouldn't have been like firemen we have today. These would have probably just been volunteers.
Yeah, people asked just doing their best to try and help. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And that they're trying to get through to put out the fire, and they're obviously being held up by the streets just being full of people. So by Sunday afternoon, the fire has already travelled 500 metres west along the river, and it's already earned the title, so it's not even anywhere close to being done yet, but it's already earned the title of most damaging fire to strike London in living memory. So it's already making its mark.
Only living memory. Yeah. I'm not that impressed.
No. About the time, this is big. So all through Monday, the fire continues to burn, and it's moving west and it's moving north, and like it's sightseeing basically. And thankfully, didn't actually reach the south due to the River Thames acting as a barrier, but it did take out the houses on London Bridge, and it was about to hop across to Southwark.
Southwark.
Is that how you say it? Southwark?
Southwark, yeah.
Oh my God,
It's a London borough.
I've been saying it wrong my whole life.
It's Southwark. It's where you'll find Bermondsey and...
Do you know what? A lot of my ancestors are from there, and I wasn't even pronouncing it right. That is shocking. I apologise, ancestors. Anyway, where was I? Oh, so the fire's trying
Southwark.
to get across to Southwark. Southwark.
Yeah.
Jesus. Sounds like Suffolk. Anyway.
Southwark. It's just as well they didn't have a cavalry.
Southwark. Yeah. But because there was a bit of a gap between the buildings, that kind of acted like a fire break. So it was like, you shall not pass.
Interesting. Kind of yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, so if that doesn't show them that this is what you should be doing, nothing will.
They did learn from this, but we'll come to that. So up north, so the northern part of London, things are literally hotting up. So by 10 a.m, the fire had already reached, so we're going back a little bit now, but by 10 a.m, the fire had reached Lombard Street, which is where all the bankers lived, and that resulted in a mass panic. They're desperately trying to rescue all their coins before they melted into shiny puddles. So
no sympathy.
Sorry?
I have no sympathy for them.
No. So collectively, everyone's just having a literal meltdown, and that pun was intended.
Shocking.
Most of the city was just a jumble of wailing, confused people, and by the afternoon, the flames began to close in on the posh end of town. So cheap. Funnily enough, it's the posh end of town, but it's Cheapside.
Cheapside, yeah.
I guess cheap must have meant something different then, but all the luxury shops and the Royal Exchange, which was pretty much a 1600s version of a very fancy shopping mall, that went up in the afternoon, and within a few hours it was nothing but a shell. It was gone. Whole thing was gone.
So Cheapside, it comes from an old English word, I should pronounce seapan, which means marketplace.
Fair enough. Maybe that's why we say
an actual fact.
Okay. So yeah, fire has now burnt down the Royal Exchange. There was another gentleman diarist of the time, a John Evelyn, and he recorded the events in his diary, and he noted that people were just absolutely shocked, and they just ran around crying and didn't even try and save their homes or their posh hats. They were just panicking. They just didn't know what to do. This was an absolute disaster. So in short, it was a very bad for London, and it was only just getting started. So yeah. Anyway,
what, 8 hours in?
Yeah. So the fire, as the fire continues to spread, so does some whispers. There's whispers that the fire isn't just a very unfortunate baking accident. What's happening is because the wind's so strong, it's starting to fling all the debris, all the fiery embers and the debris. It's flinging it all over the place, and because the roofs are made of straw, all the burning bits, they're finding their way onto these roofs, and they're starting new fires in places that hadn't even ordered a fire.
Outrageous.
Absolutely. So naturally, this gave rise to all sorts of rumours, and people were saying, well, people are deliberately setting the city alight, because why is that on fire now? So this gossip, it quickly evolved into a full-blown conspiracy theory, as things do. We haven't changed, have we? Let's be honest.
No.
And there's stories going around that undercover agents are hurling fireballs into buildings or being caught red-handed with grenades and matches, and yeah. So this...
#Firestarter.
Yes. So this started a wave of street violence. Clearly the best way to handle a city-wide inferno is to chuck a riot on top of it, because that's going to help the situation, obviously.
Why not?
Might as well. So while everyone's raging on, the fire's also raging on, and this is a classic example of making the best out of a bad situation. So flames are raging on. All the well-to-do residents, they're starting to panic because they're thinking, I've got a lot of valuable stuff here, I need to get it out. So we're talking silverware, silk gowns, portraits of bored-looking ancestors, all that sort of stuff. So this sudden panic and this dash to get out became a bit of a money-making bonanza for the able-bodied poor, who suddenly thought, oh, hang on a minute, freelance removal man, that's me.
I've got a cart. Yeah, we can make some money.
Well, basically, if you had a working set of legs, or better yet, a cart or a boat, you were basically sitting on a gold mine. So a week earlier, you could rent a cart for a few shillings, but by Monday, the price had rocketed to £40, which doesn't sound a lot now, but that was a small fortune. Now, that may be an exaggeration. I don't know if that's actually true, but that would be roughly around £8,000 in today's money. Or maybe 4 pints at a pub in London.
Today's money, yeah.
Yeah. Literally every cart and boat in London just appeared out of nowhere, all ready to cash in. But of course this led to absolute gridlock at the city gate. So the city's on fire, because you have to remember as well, and again, I did mention it in a previous episode when I was talking about the plague, the city at this point is still surrounded by a big Roman wall, and it has gates leading in and out. So at all the gates, you just got absolute gridlock, everyone just trying to get out. So
for anyone listening, the city is the area where you'll find the Tower of London.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the city's just that bit in the middle.
Some of that Roman wall. Yeah.
Obviously, London has expanded massively since then, but anyway, this is so absolute gridlock. Things are so chaotic that about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the local magistrates actually ordered that the gates close. Their thinking behind that, it wasn't they were thinking, oh, we'll just trap everyone in and let them burn. They were thinking, if people aren't obsessing over their furniture, they might actually just lend a hand with this fire. But things things were starting to get slightly more organised. So obviously there's mass panic, but someone was trying to take charge. That wasn't the Lord Mayor, unfortunately. He pretty much vanished after that day, so we don't know what happened to him. Either he melted, or he just, yeah, maybe he was just hiding under his bed with his chamber pot the whole time. I don't know what he was doing. But he's basically missing in action. So King Charles II, he handed the reins to his brother James, the Duke of York, who I mentioned earlier. And James, to be fair, he got stuck right in. So he started to set up command posts around the edge of the fire, and he appointed, to each post, he appointed 3 courtiers, and they were armed with royal permission to start tearing down buildings willy-nilly. So they were like, just whatever you need, just pull it down, just you know. But sadly, even the royal efforts couldn't save everything. And that evening, despite everyone crossing their fingers, toes and unmentionables, the Baynard's Castle, which was kind of a western cousin to the Tower of London, that went up and that burnt down. Yeah, so that was a bit of a kick in the goolies. Yeah. But anyway, so this is all Monday. This is all happening on Monday. So this is only day 2 of the fire.
Wow.
So we get to Tuesday, and this is where it actually gets worse, believe it or not. So hold on to your hats. It's still going to get worse. Yes.
Wow.
So Tuesday turned out to be the fire's most destructive day. So obviously we haven't had enough destruction to be going on with. We need more. So the Duke of York, James, he had set up his Grand Command at the, like a post, Grand Command post at Temple Bar, which is where Fleet Street meets the Strand. I don't know if you're familiar with geography. I'm not that good with geography, but it's in and around that area. So his idea was we make a heroic last stand along the River Fleet, and what he was actually intending was that the river would act like a fire break. Sounds easy, but didn't work. So early hours, or very early Tuesday, I don't know if it was early hours, if it was just early, but Tuesday morning, Duke and the firemen, they're all gearing up for glory, and the flames decided to just skip the confrontation. They just literally jumped across the river like a big fiery show off. And do you know what? That makes me laugh. I know it's awful, but it reminds me of a time, one evening, when there was a ginormous spider in our flat, like it was like a tarantula, and me and Dave, we're terrified of spiders. We're both hopeless, and we come up with this strategy to like get this spider, and we basically put a chair on either side. And I don't know if I should tell this story because it's a bit long. It's a bit pointless, but anyway, I'll try and shorten it. So we're either
give it a podcast of its own.
Sorry, yeah.
We'll give it a podcast.
The spider. So we're either side of the spider, and we're on chairs, and Dave's like, okay, you kind of chase it towards me and I'll catch it in this little pot or whatever we had. But it took us so long to gear ourselves up that the spider just ended up going the other direction. It just hid itself under the piano, and it was like, oh, it's gone now. But it was just, we're sitting there like gearing ourselves up, trying to like egg each other. Okay, you ready? And then the spider's just gone, oh, I'm done. And it just,
so
anyway.
What I've taken from that story is that you had a piano, but clearly not a Hoover.
Yeah, but you can't hoover them because then they die.
What were you going to do with it?
Put it outside to live in the wild.
What do you think? What do you think happens to a house spider when you put it outside?
It can go to someone else's house, not mine.
It'd be dead. You might as well just hoovered it up.
Quick death. Okay, I'll keep that in mind for future.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Rather than letting it hide behind the piano.
I know that story was a bit... No, it wasn't. No, it was just an upright. Yeah, that yeah. I can see the connection, but this is basically what it reminds me of. They're all geared up, ready for this fire, and it just goes, whoop, and it just jumps across the river. So they just legged it. They were like, okay, done. So much for the big stand. So by lunchtime, so this is still Tuesday, by lunchtime the fires got to Ludgate and Newgate, and it destroyed the prisons. Hopefully all the prisoners got out. They probably did. Then it started to head east against the wind, and it was making a beeline for the Tower of London, which very conveniently was sitting on a stash of gunpowder. Definitely don't want to be having a fire. No. So with the official firefighting team, they're still busy trying to rescue what remained of the West. The Tower garrison, they just gave up waiting, and the garrison are the like the guards that kind of look after the tower and the surrounding area, just to make that clear. So they gave up waiting, and they just took matters into their own hands, and they're thinking, well, the fire's coming our way, we can't have this. We're sitting on an absolute ton of gunpowder here. So they just started blowing up houses. They got loads of gunpowder. They started blowing up houses left, right and centre to create these big fire breaks, and it actually worked. So the eastward march of the fire, it was finally stopped, thanks to a few well-placed explosions and some, well, I imagine some very nervous soldiers.
That's quite handy, because the fire was only then 40 minutes away by train from Basildon.
Mm-hmm. See how that might have gone.
Yeah, God.
Basildon would have been even better. No, I'm joking. So
it's the second dig you've had of Basildon in
I'm allowed to. I live here. I live here. I'm allowed to say it.
No, you're not.
Saying that, I'm technically an outsider, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not from Basildon like you, Mr. 12th generation Basildon.
Yep.
I'll get you a badge for your birthday. A T-shirt. The
sooner you're deported, the better.
Yeah. That's why I can't pronounce anything, because I'm not actually native. That's my excuse. Anyway, so the fire's still causing havoc everywhere else, and this time it had St Paul's Cathedral in its sights. Now, everyone had assumed that St Paul's, and I must stop leaning on my desk because it makes the microphone wobble, so I apologise for that sound you probably just heard. It probably went boom. Sorry about that.
Nobody likes a wobbly microphone.
No, they don't. I need to do something about that. Anyway, so everyone assumed St Paul's would be safe because it's got thick stone walls, it's got a big open square in front that looked like it might stop the flames. And people actually used it to keep all their belongings, thinking, oh, it would be safe. So all of the people's valuables and things that they've managed to rescue before they legged it, stuffed it into St Paul's. The crypt was packed to the rafters with books and papers from the nearby printers and booksellers on Paternoster Row. Or Paternoster, could be either of the two.
Paternoster, yeah.
Paternoster. But unfortunately, St Paul's was actually mid-makeover under Christopher Wren, the architect.
Yeah.
And it was wrapped with scaffolding, which was made of, you've guessed it, wood. And yeah, by the evening, whole lot is up in flames. The lead on the roof just melted like a candle, and within hours the whole thing's just a smouldering wreck. And that was the end of, well, it wasn't the end of, but that was St Paul's just gone. Yeah, not good.
And not helped by being packed with paper.
No, definitely wouldn't have helped. it was basically a great big bonfire waiting to happen. So by Tuesday evening, the wind started to die down a bit, because the wind's been definitely not helping us anyway. Helping, like I said, helping the fire, but not us. So the fire breaks that the garrison had been trying to hack out, they started to do their job. So by Wednesday, things were starting to look a little bit better, less like an apocalypse. Our man Pepys, he climbed up the steeple of Barking Church to have a look, and he declared that it was the saddest sight of desolation that I ever saw. And given that most of the city was now just a big pile of ash, that was quite a fair comment.
There must have been miles of it cleared.
Yeah. So the fire hasn't completely gone, but it's pretty much done. There's a few fires smouldering here and there, but the worst of it has kind of burnt itself out. Although some coal in the cellars, that actually burnt for another 2 months or so. That just kept going.
Wow.
So where are all the people? Because everyone's just legged it. Well, they're all camping out up in Moorfields, which is a big open park just north of the city. And it was heaving. It was full of all the newly homeless Londoners. They're all camping out, and they've lost everything. Some of them had tents, and some of them have managed to cobble together shacks out of just whatever they could find. But some didn't even have a blanket to their name. So yeah, very sad. And if that wasn't enough drama, everyone's still not convinced that the fire has been that it was an accident, and they're convinced that there's foreign troublemakers behind it.
Oh, how times have changed.
Yeah, well. So on Wednesday night, panic broke out because someone spotted a mysterious light over Fleet Street. And they put it on Facebook, and then everyone started to panic, and a rumour started on Facebook. Can you imagine if they had Facebook then? Can you imagine? Oh my god. But the rumour was that
there'd been images though.
Yeah. The rumour was that 50,000 angry French and Dutch were marching to Moorfields with murder and looting in mind. So people are terrified.
I wonder where they thought. Yeah, I wonder where they think these 50,000 angry French and Dutchmen have come from. Have they just invaded?
Obviously. Blame Facebook.
Yeah, it doesn't make.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So
I think if I was French or Dutch and I thought, right, I'm invading London, I get there as it's burnt down, I'm going to be angry.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, for God's sake, nothing left. Might as well
Terrible
go home.
timing. Yeah.
So people are terrified, and they all started to surge into the streets, and they just started attacking anyone that's got even the slightest foreign accent. They were attacking them. So that was chaos, and in the end, the trained bands and the lifeguards. So the trained bands are they're like part-time military, and they kind of step in the absence of the army.
Yeah.
And then the lifeguards are the military units that historically are tasked with protecting high-ranking officials like the monarch. And anyway, so they've had to step in, and they basically said, "Look, pack it in," you know.
So what was this light in the sky that they were seeing?
Well, apparently it was just another fire flaring up in a temple, and they tried to blow up Paper House to stop it, but that didn't work. So I guess it just burnt itself out.
It's just to blow over a paper house.
Yeah. So fire's mostly burnt out, and the Court of Aldermen, they waste no time in getting stuck in, and they start organising for the mess to be cleared and making sure people could get food. And by the Saturday after the blaze, Moorfields Market was already back in business, like nothing had happened. And Charles II, never one to miss a PR opportunity, obviously, he cheerfully suggested that the newly homeless might like to try their luck anywhere but London. And he issued a royal proclamation to every town and city saying, just roll out the welcome mat so people can get back to their trades. And so he essentially just kicked everybody out and went, everyone just go away while we sort this out, and go somewhere else. That was kind of what he was doing. But anyway, so the official account in the London Gazette at the time was that the fire had been an act of God.
Oh dear, how childish. Blame your imaginary friend.
Yes. Don't, because we'll start all sorts of... Anyway, we won't go there. But despite this, rumours are still flying around that the blaze had been started deliberately and in a frantic hunt for anyone to blame. The authorities latched on to this poor dude called Robert Hubert. So he was a bit confused. He was a French watchmaker, and he confessed that he was part of the gang who started the fire, but in Westminster, which doesn't make sense. Then he changed his mind and he said, oh, actually, no, wait, I acted on my own, and I started the fire in Pudding Lane in the bakery. Which he obviously doesn't know whether he's coming or going, does he? But despite the fact...
I wonder if he made that confession under duress, or it was because there was a mental illness or something there.
Maybe, I don't know.
We'll never know, I suppose.
Despite the fact that there were very serious doubts as to whether he actually knew what was going on, he was found guilty and he was hung at Tyburn on the 29th of October, 1666. But as it turned out, it was discovered after they'd hung him, that he was on a ship bobbing around in the North Sea when the fire broke out, and he didn't actually set foot in London until 2 days later. So unless he had...
story rings a bell.
Unless he had a very, very long match and a very good aim, he wasn't the man, which is a bit awkward because they've already hung him. But while this is going on, a committee's been set up to figure out what or who had started the Great Fire. And Sir Robert Brooke, he is an English landowner. He's also a magistrate, commissioner, military officer, a knight, an MP, blah, 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 blah. So he's basically a big wig. He's the chair.
Busy bloke.
He's a busy bloke, yeah. He's chairing this committee, and all the wild theories start to pour in, and mostly foreigners and Catholics are being blamed for the fire. And the committee eventually presented its findings to Parliament in January 1667, so the following year. And there are printed versions of the report which confidently claim that poor old Hubert, he was responsible for starting the fire. And that he didn't act alone, but was part of a full-blown Catholic conspiracy to toast the capital. So clearly this wasn't an exercise in calm evidence-based reasoning, because it just doesn't make any sense.
Who don't we like? Let's blame them.
He wasn't even there. So he's hardly prime arsonist material, because he wasn't even in the city when it's burnt. Anyway. So now all that's out of the way, we've got the rebuild, because pretty much most of London has gone. So now they have to rebuild. So to stop London from descending into years of legal squabbling and more finger pointing, a special fire court was set up. And there was one from February 1667 to December 1668. And then there was another one from 1670 to 1676.
Wow, that's a long old period.
Yes, well, so they've got a whole city to rebuild. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. If I did.
No. And they're backed by some new acts that have been passed. One is the Fire of London Disputes Act 1666 and the Rebuilding of London Act 1670. So whenever something happens, someone puts an act, makes an act about it. And anyway, so the court's job was to decide who should pay to rebuild what. So whether it be the landlords, the tenants, or whoever had the deepest pockets. And they got through the cases very quickly, often wrapped them up within a day, which was just as well, because can you imagine how long it would have taken to rebuild a whole city if they were dragging their feet?
Yeah, it's long enough now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've got a whole city to rebuild. They ain't got time to muck about. They need to just crack on. So, radical rebuilding schemes were encouraged by Charles II. So, as well as Christopher Wren and Robert Evelyn, we've got Robert Hooke. These are all like architects. Yeah. Valentine Knight and a Richard Newcourt. So they all proposed new building plans, and that all of the plans followed a grid system, which was very fashionable across the pond in the American cities. And had any of these grand schemes actually been carried out, London might have given Paris a run for its money in the Baroque Beauty Stakes. But, and Christopher Wren's plan, it was encouraging the separation of social classes into areas. But the snag with this was the task of trying to sort out who actually owned what. It was easier said than done. So that didn't happen, this whole grid, because otherwise we'd probably look like New York on a smaller scale. So instead, much of the old street layout was just stitched back together and rebuilt. But the rebuild did bring about some much needed upgrades. So we've got wider streets, so fewer elbows in the ribs. And we've got open walls all along the Thames instead of houses. And most crucially, they did learn from this one, buildings are made of brick and stone instead of timber. So the Rebuilding London Act, 1666, they stepped in with a firm no wood on the outside, please. And they regulated building costs, workers' wages, and they placed a deadline. Everyone got a 3-year deadline to rebuild, or they risked losing their land. So you needed to.
Yeah, I think this is the act. This act is the reason why there's no thatched buildings in London anymore.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
Well, after a great big fire, you're going to play it safe, aren't you?
I don't think so.
Because you do still get a lot of timber framed, and I don't know if I've seen any in it, because obviously not the whole of London burnt down, so there probably will be timber framed buildings in existence in London, but what was being rebuilt was brick and stone, no wood on the outside. So they weren't taking any chances. So who was paying for this? Well, they put a tax on coal, which kind of annoyed everyone quite a lot. But it worked, because by 1671 most private homes were actually back up, and then the grand public buildings, they rose phoenix-like from the ashes, including the new St Paul's Cathedral and 51 new churches, which were courtesy of Christopher Wren. So quite a lot.
I've got a feeling off the top of my head I don't think he lived long enough to see this either.
Christopher Wren,
Yeah.
I don't know when he died. I do know that Robert Brooke died shortly after. He died in 69. He died very young. Christopher Wren, I'm not sure when he died, actually.
I know, ignore me. He did live long enough to see it.
Oh, fair enough.
God blimey, he lived into old age. He was 90.
Wow, that was old. That was
old.
That's
decent, yeah.
That is very decent. Even 40's decent then.
Who feels it now?
This is happening. I have to mention there was an English economist called Nicholas Barban, and he kind of took a more of a rules are just guidelines, not rules approach, and he went ahead with his own rebuilding adventures. So he reshaped. I don't even know where that word came from. He reshaped chunks of London in the process. So he developed the Strand, St Giles, Bloomsbury and Holborn. So he had a great old building spree. So a lot of those developments that we can enjoy today would have come from here.
Wow.
Yes. So now we think about how did the fire actually impact London? Now what's incredible is that there aren't many deaths recorded, official deaths recorded from the fire. It's actually single figures, believe it or not, around 8. That sounds crazy, doesn't it?
That's all.
But that was recorded deaths. We can't assume that there weren't any unrecorded deaths, which, given the chaos, that's very possible, that not every death would have been recorded. Also, many people may have initially survived the fire, but they would have perished later from hunger or exposure because they lost their homes. So that technically wouldn't have been recorded as a death in the fire, but it was still related, if that makes sense. But even if the death toll was very low, the fire did dramatically reshape the city, not just physically, but socially, economically, and in terms of urban planning. So around 13,200 houses were burnt down, 87 churches, and most of the city that was within the old Roman walls, it was destroyed. So entire neighbourhoods just reduced to ash, just gone, just within a couple of days.
Huge area.
Absolutely huge, yeah. So in a way, it was a bit of a brutal urban reset. On one kind of, on the plus side, a lot of the plague-infested areas were destroyed. So with them, the last major outbreak of bubonic plague in London was wiped out. And because we were only, although we say, we were over the plague, we were only just over the plague. And who was to say that if the fire hadn't have happened, the plague may have had a comeback, like COVID? We'd had a summer of plague. I think it was around 18 months of just everyone just dying. And then it kind of levelled out, but it may have made a comeback. The fire kind of reset everything. And sanitation improved because all the grime and filth had just been wiped out. So everything was kind of clean and sparkling again. And when they did rebuild the city, they did it according to much stricter regulations, which didn't apply to Nicholas Barbon. He just did his own thing. But the fire gave birth to stricter cartography and urban planning because they needed accurate maps for the rebuild. So that actually nudged London closer to becoming the modern city that we know it today. And
it really shaped what you see in London today. It
did, because up until this point, London was a very medieval city, and it may have stayed that way. So, in a nutshell,
now disappointed.
In a nutshell, the Great Fire, it was very catastrophic, but it did spark a transformation. So, out of all of it, London has emerged stronger, safer, and a little bit grander, with less fleas and more bricks.
Lovely,
yes. So that was the Great Fire of London in a nutshell.
Have you ever been to Monument?
I have not.
They have a huge monument to the Great Fire of London. Yes, you should. It's not far from the train station. There's a lot of steps, but it's worth going up there.
Okay.
Look at the view.
You need to have a day out in London and just go to these places. There was somewhere else I wanted to go. I want to go to Kew. And there's another place. Oh, the Guildhall.
Oh, okay.
That's meant to be a really, really good place to visit. Because I forget where it is. I'd love it if it was near Kew, because then I could kind of do both. But anyway, that's something for another day.
Get the train into Fenchurch Street. You can walk to. Well, you can walk.
Oh,
to St.
really?
There quite
That's
easily,
not far from here, is it?
Monument.
Fenchurch. That's about 40 minutes, if that.
Yeah.
That's doable. Yeah, there's no excuses really. Well, actually, there is. Train fares. Money. Yeah, train fares are ridiculous. It'd be cheaper for me to drive a Land Rover there and pay for the diesel? Actually, no, because they've done that blooming thing, haven't they? What's it called?
Yeah, you've got the ULEZ. Yeah.
Forgot about that. God damn. But anyway.
Yeah, let's not get onto ULEZ.
Let's not get into ULEZ, no. It'll make me very angry. But anyway.
Yeah, poisonous emissions and the Great Fire of London.
Yes. But that was the Great Fire of London, 1666.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. And please remember that we're not experts or escorts. We're just two history fans fumbling our way through subjects we enjoy. And now I'm to bury my cheese.
Thank you for listening to the We're Not Experts History Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at We're Not Experts Podcast, where you will also find our link tree on the profile page. If you enjoyed the podcast, please give us a like on whichever app you listen to and share with your friends.